Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The moon hung pale and distant over the towers of Dragonstone, its light glimmering across the black waves like shards of broken glass. The wind that swept through the fortress carried with it the salt of the sea and the distant echoing cry of dragons. Within the ancient stronghold, Aemond Targaryen stood before the great basalt window of the war chamber, his single violet eye fixed upon the horizon. Below him, the restless sea rolled and hissed, as though whispering of what was to come. Behind him, a fire burned low in the hearth, casting tall shadows upon the walls where the carved sigils of House Targaryen, the three-headed dragon, danced and twisted like living things. He was young, yet already a legend, the one-eyed prince, kinslayer, rider of Vhagar, the oldest and mightiest of the dragons still living. The air itself seemed to tremble when her wings darkened the sky. But this night, Aemond felt no triumph, no glory. He felt only the ache of hunger, not of the flesh, but of the soul. The war for the Iron Throne, the dance of the dragons, had torn the realm asunder. Castles had burned, kin had slain kin, and rivers had run red with dragonfire. Aemond had fought and killed for his mother's cause, for Queen Rhaenyra's claim, but victory, if it came, would not fill the emptiness gnawing at him. He turned when the chamber doors opened. The sound was soft, yet sharp as steel to his ear. A woman entered, cloaked in gray, her hair streaked with silver. Maester Orlyn called her Lady Mara of Lys, though none knew her true name. She had come to Dragonstone weeks past, whispering of ancient things long buried in the ruins of Valyria. "The Queen grants her blessing," she said, her voice smooth as poured wine. "You will go, Prince Aemond, to the smoking sea. There lies the relic your blood was born to find." Aemond's jaw tightened. And if this relic is but another Lysene trick, another fable of lost Valyria? Lady Mara smiled faintly, her eyes gleaming like polished obsidian. "Then you will return with nothing, my prince. But if it is truth, it may give you power such as even dragons once feared. Power." The word slid into Aemond's mind like a blade. For months he had dreamt of fire, a dragon's fire that consumed not only flesh, but spirit. He had felt Vhagar's thoughts in his own, fierce and ancient, as though some part of her soul were waking anew. Could this relic be the key to that bond? He dismissed Mara with a nod, yet her smile lingered in his thoughts long after she was gone. That night, Aemond walked the cliffs where the dragons roosted. The ground trembled with the weight of giants, leathery wings stirring the air, eyes glowing in the dark like molten gold. Vhagar waited at the edge of the cliff, her massive head lowered, nostrils steaming. The sea mist clung to her scales, and when she opened her jaws, the faint light of her inner fire flickered within. Aemond reached out, placing his gloved hand against her snout. "Old girl," he murmured, "will you take me once more into the smoke?" Vhagar's answer came as a low rumble that rolled through the stones beneath his boots. Together they would fly again, into the heart of the world that had birthed them both. By dawn, Dragonstone was a shadow behind him. The wind tore at his hair as Vhagar soared eastward over the narrow sea, wings cutting through clouds like knives through silk. Below them, ships turned like toys upon the waves, their sailors staring skyward in terror and awe. They flew for days, past Lys and Myr, past the smoking waters of the volcanic isles, into the haunted stretch of sea men called Cursed. The smoking sea. No ship dared sail it. The water boiled and fumed, thick with the stench of brimstone. The ruins of old Valyria lay beyond, a land of shattered towers and rivers of stone, where dragons once ruled and doom had fallen like judgment from the gods. Aemond felt it the moment they crossed the threshold of that dead realm, a pressure in the air, as if the very sky resisted their passage. The wind grew hot and dry, tasting of ash. Below, the land stretched endless and broken, molten rivers glowing beneath obsidian cliffs, forests of stone petrified mid-bloom. There, among the ruins, Aemond saw something gleaming. A tower, still standing where all others had fallen, its peak crowned with light that pulsed like a living heart. "Down, Vhagar," he commanded, voice barely more than a whisper. They descended through curtains of smoke until the tower loomed before them. Strange glyphs were carved upon its sides. Valyrian symbols, twisted and jagged, burned into the black stone as if by dragon fire itself. At the base, a gate of red metal stood open, and the light from within beckoned. Aemond dismounted, the heat pressing against his armor like breath from some unseen beast. Every instinct warned him to turn back, yet something stronger pulled him forward, the hunger that had haunted his dreams. Inside, the tower walls pulsed faintly with crimson light, as though veins of fire ran beneath the stone. The air was thick, heavy with power and memory. And there, upon a pedestal of black glass, lay a shard of something that shimmered with colors unseen by mortal eyes. A fragment of what might once have been a dragon's heart. Aemond stepped closer. It pulsed once, and the ground shuddered. Then came the whisper, faint, ancient, and cold as the grave. "Valzithra." Aemond froze. The voice was not his own, nor any he knew. It came from within the shard, from within the fire itself. And in that moment, as the air burned and Vhagar roared outside the tower, the prince felt the hunger of something older than dragons awaken, something that had been waiting for him. The earth trembled beneath the tower as though the heart of Valyria itself stirred in its sleep. The crimson light within the stone pulsed again, slow and steady, like the beat of a great heart. Aemond's breath came shallow. His hand, trembling despite his will, hovered above the shard. It was no jewel. Its surface was rough, alive with shifting hues that bled from red to gold to deepest violet. It called to him. The whisper came once more, curling through the air like smoke. Valzithra. He did not know the meaning, but he felt it, deep in his bones, in the marrow of his dragon-bound blood. It was a summons. When his fingers brushed the shard, the world ignited. Aemond staggered back as fire flared through his veins. He saw visions not his own, cities of shining marble and gold, dragons that dwarfed mountains soaring above rivers of flame. Then, the doom. A roar so vast it split the heavens, a storm of fire that consumed sky and sea alike. He saw towers collapse, men and dragons burn together, and through it all, that same whispering voice murmuring from the ashes. When his vision cleared, he was on his knees, the shard clutched tight in his fist. It was no longer glowing. Its light had gone out, but Aemond could feel it, pulsing faintly beneath his skin, as though a spark had passed from stone to flesh. Outside, Vhagar bellowed, wings beating the air in fury. The sound echoed through the ruins like thunder. Aemond rose unsteadily, his head ringing. As he stepped from the tower, he saw shadows moving through the smoke. Men, armored, cloaked, armed with spears of black steel. Their sigils were strange, foreign, but one among them he recognized, the twin-headed wyvern of House Rogar of Lys. Prince Aemond of Dragonstone, a man called, his voice carrying over the crackle of flame. He stepped forward, tall, with hair pale as milk and a scar across his jaw. "The relic belongs to us. Stand aside, and we will not harm you." Aemond's lips twisted into a cold smile. "You are bold, Lyseni, to stand before Vhagar and speak of mercy." The man's smile did not falter. "Vhagar cannot save you here. The air is poison. The ground is cursed. Even dragons fear this place." Behind Aemond, the wind stirred as Vhagar shifted, her vast wings scattering the smoke. Her eyes glowed like furnaces. "I do not fear the curse," Aemond said. "I am of the blood of Valyria." With that, he drew Dark Sister, the slender, curved Valyrian blade that had belonged to Visenya herself. Its edge caught the crimson light as though it drank it. The Lyseni raised their weapons, and for a heartbeat the world was still. Then came the storm. Aemond moved like a striking serpent, his blade cutting through the nearest man's throat. Vhagar roared, unleashing a blast of fire that turned the air to glass. The ruins shuddered, the sky lit as bright as noon. Men screamed, turned to ash, and the survivors fled into the choking smoke. When silence fell again, only the hiss of cooling stone remained. Aemond stood amid the ruin, his chest heaving, his armor scorched and splattered with soot. He looked to the shard still clutched in his hand. It pulsed faintly, almost in rhythm with his heartbeat. He did not see Lady Mara until her voice broke the stillness behind him. "You have found it," she said softly, "and already it feeds upon you." He turned sharply, Dark Sister still slick with blood. "You followed me." "I guided you," she said, stepping closer, her cloak brushing the blackened ground. Her eyes gleamed with eerie calm. "Do you think it chance that I came to Dragonstone, that I spoke of the relic at all? No, my prince. The shard called, and I merely listened." "What is it?" Aemond demanded. "What name does it bear?" She tilted her head. In the old tongue, it was known as Zoclarian, the demon's heart, a fragment of the fire that devoured Valyria, the hunger that even dragons could not contain. Her words sank into him like cold iron. "And you would give this to me, knowing what it is?" "I would not give it," she replied, her tone quiet and dangerous. "It has already chosen you." Before he could speak again, a deep tremor rolled through the earth. Vhagar's head snapped toward the horizon, nostrils flaring. From beyond the smoking hills came a sound, low and terrible, like the groan of mountains breaking. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with shadow. Mara's eyes widened. "You have woken it." Aemond turned to the east, where molten rivers ran like veins through the shattered land. The smoke parted, and for the briefest instant, he saw something vast and winged moving beneath it. Scales black as obsidian, eyes burning with the same fire as the shard. A dragon, but not one of his blood. Vhagar roared again, and the sound shook the heavens. "Fly!" Mara hissed. "If you stay, you die." But Aemond did not flee. He mounted Vhagar, the shard still burning cold against his palm. As they rose into the ash-laden sky, the creature below unfurled its wings, greater even than Vhagar's, forged of shadow and flame. It was no living beast. Its flesh cracked like stone. Its breath was molten light. It was the relic's twin, the hunger made flesh, and it was rising. Vhagar roared defiance, and Aemond's voice joined hers, lost to the wind and thunder. The demon of Valyria had awakened, and the prince who sought power would now learn the price of waking gods. The sky was a furnace of red and black. Ash fell like snow as Vhagar wheeled high above the burning plain, her wings beating thunder through the smoke. Beneath them, the monster clawed its way from the heart of the ruin, vast, terrible, and alive with ancient fury. Its body shimmered like molten rock, each scale glowing from within as though it held the fire of the world's beginning. Aemond's heart hammered as he beheld it. The creature's wings unfurled, great sails of cracked stone veined with light. Every beat of them stirred the clouds into spirals of smoke. Its eyes found him, pits of molten gold that seemed to see straight through his soul. Vhagar snarled, a low, thunderous growl that made the mountains quake. She had faced foes beyond count in her long life, but even she trembled before this thing born of doom. "Dracarys," Aemond cried, his voice carried away by the wind. Vhagar unleashed her fire. It poured from her jaws in a torrent that split the sky, white-hot and blinding. The blast struck the creature full in the chest and did nothing. The flames washed over its hide, devoured, absorbed, until it seemed to burn brighter for the assault. Then, with a sound like the cracking of the world, it roared back. A wave of searing flame burst from its maw, striking the air with such force that Vhagar reeled. Aemond clung to her neck, his armor glowing red from the heat. They climbed higher, the air thin and biting as the demon dragon rose after them, faster than any living thing had a right to fly. It struck, claws raking the air where they had been moments before. Vhagar twisted, bellowing in fury, and Aemond drove his heels into her flanks. "Up!" he shouted. "To the clouds!" They rose until the smoke thinned, breaking through into the night above. Stars wheeled cold and distant. For a heartbeat, Aemond saw only the endless blackness. Then the demon burst through below, shattering the clouds in a storm of ash and light. Vhagar turned and dove, her body coiled like a serpent, and Aemond lowered his lance, steel blackened, etched with the runes of old Valyria. They fell upon the beast from above, striking with all the fury of sky and flame. The lance plunged deep into the creature's neck, cracking stone, spilling liquid fire that hissed and burned through Aemond's gauntlet. The monster screamed. The sound was not of this world. It tore the air asunder, sent ripples through the clouds. Vhagar roared triumph, but too soon. The creature's tail lashed upward, striking them with the force of a siege ram. Aemond felt the world spin. Vhagar shrieked as the impact sent them tumbling. Her wings caught fire, one torn near the joint. The ground rushed up, burning plains, rivers of magma, shattered ruins. "Hold, girl," he shouted, voice raw. "Hold." At the last instant, Vhagar righted herself, her wings straining against the wind. They skimmed low over the molten rivers, the air thick with smoke and cinders. Behind them, the demon followed, slower now, wounded, but unbroken. Aemond looked down at the shard still clutched in his left hand. It pulsed again, faster, stronger, as though feeding on the chaos. He felt its heat through his glove, through his skin, through his very bones. And then he heard it whisper, "Together, we are whole." He gasped, clutching his head. The world blurred, flashes of fire and ruin, voices chanting in a language older than time. His vision filled with dragons circling towers of flame, with men crowned in fire, with the doom itself, a wave of light swallowing all. "Leave me," he snarled aloud, shaking his head as though to fling the voice away. But the whisper only deepened. "You are mine, Aemond Targaryen. The blood remembers. The fire remembers." He could feel Vhagar's mind beneath his. Vast, ancient, wild. Their bond had always been strong, But now he felt something else pushing between them, threading through their thoughts like poison. Vhagar roared in pain, twisting in the air. Her eye, one great amber jewel, flicked toward him in confusion. "No," Aemond breathed. "Do not fear me, old girl. I will not yield." Below, the land shifted. He saw movement among the ruins, shapes, men on horseback, banners fluttering. Through the haze he glimpsed gold and black, the colors of the Rogare Company. They had followed him, or perhaps never left. Aemond guided Vhagar downward. If he could draw the demon toward them, perhaps its wrath would serve his need. "Come, beast," he growled. "Let us see if you can bleed." They descended, the demon closing fast behind. The ground shook as it struck, its claws rending stone. The men below scattered in terror. Their screams were lost in the roar of flame as Aemond steered Vhagar into another dive, fire streaming from her jaws. The blast struck true this time, carving open the creature's flank. Light poured out, a wound that burned brighter than the sun. The beast convulsed, its wings flailing wildly, sending waves of molten rock in every direction. Then, as the roar of battle faded, Aemond felt the shard's pulse again, now steady, rhythmic, alive. And deep in his chest, something answered. Pain tore through him, sharp as a blade. His veins burned, his vision reddened. He could feel the shard's power coursing through him, not consuming, but merging. The same fire that lived in the demon now lived in him. "Aemond!" a voice cried. Mara, standing on the ridge, her face lit by the firestorm. "Cast it away! Do it now!" He could barely hear her. The voice inside him roared louder than her words. "Do not deny me. You are the heir of fire. You are the hunger that never ends." Vhagar shrieked, her wings folding as she bucked violently beneath him. The pain between them was shared now, their bond warped by the shard's magic. He tried to drop it, but his hand would not open. It was fused to his flesh, its light shining through the cracks in his gauntlet. The demon stirred once more, turning its blazing eyes toward him. In them he saw not hatred, but kinship, recognition. And in that instant, Aemond knew. The relic had not woken a creature of stone and flame. It had woken something that was part of him, a reflection of what he might become. Vhagar roared, a sound of fury and defiance, and Aemond raised his blade. The choice lay before him. Destroy the shard and lose its power, or wield it and risk becoming the thing he fought. The wind screamed around them, and the demon of Valyria spread its wings once more. And so did Aemond Targaryen. The night bled into dawn, though the sun could scarcely pierce the haze that cloaked Valyria's corpse. Smoke drifted across the black plains like the breath of ghosts, and the air reeked of ash and fire. Vhagar crouched upon a ridge of fused stone, her sides heaving with each labored breath. Her wings were torn, one eye half blinded by the demon's fury. Yet she lived, that great old she-dragon, her scales blackened but her heart unbroken. Aemond stood beside her, gauntleted hand pressed to her neck. His armor was cracked, his cloak burned to tatters, and beneath his glove the shard pulsed still, alive, whispering. It had seared itself into his flesh, a wound that glowed faintly through the metal like an ember beneath glass. Mara watched from a short distance, her hood drawn low though the heat still shimmered around them. Her face was pale, streaked with soot, yet her eyes shone bright and unwavering. "You cannot hold it much longer," she said. "That power does not belong in mortal hands." Aemond turned, his single eye glinting with fury. "I am no mortal man." She did not flinch. "All men who think themselves gods fall as men, in the end." He said nothing. His gaze drifted east to where the demon had vanished beyond the molten horizon. The wound he had dealt it still burned there, a crack of white fire splitting the dark. He could feel the creature's pain echoing through him, a dull throb deep within his chest, as though their souls had been bound together. It would come again. He could sense it, as surely as he could feel Vhagar's heartbeat through the earth. Mara stepped closer, her voice low. There is a way to break the bond. The shard was forged with fire, but it may be unmade by blood. Aemond's gaze snapped to her. Whose blood? Yours, she answered simply. He laughed then, a harsh sound that echoed through the ruins. I have shed blood enough for every cursed god in this forsaken land. It is not death I speak of, Mara said, her tone sharp as flint. The shard feeds upon you because it was born of your kind. The blood of the dragon woke it, and only dragon's blood can bind or destroy it. But you must choose, your life or its power. Aemond's hand clenched around the hilt of Dark Sister. The blade's black metal shimmered faintly, as though it too heard her words. Power is all that remains to me, he murmured. What is life without it? Mara's eyes softened, not with pity, but something colder. Then the doom will live again, and your name will be cursed as its herald. The wind shifted, bringing with it the low rumble of distant thunder. Yet Aemond knew it was no storm. He could feel it through the shard, the demon stirring, healing, hungering. It comes, he said quietly. Mara turned to the horizon, her expression grim. Then there is no more time. She drew a small dagger from her belt, its blade dull and worn. If you will not destroy it, you must master it. And that means feeding it blood freely given, not stolen. Aemond looked at her, his jaw tightening. You speak riddles, woman. I speak truth, she replied. The shard is the heart of an ancient fire drake, slain when the doom fell. Its hunger was bound within the stone, trapped by Valyrian sorcery, so that it would never rise again. But you have awakened it. Now, if you would not become its slave, you must command it as its master. How? Through blood, she repeated. Yours and your dragon's. At that, Aemond's breath caught. You would have me wound Vhagar? She will not die, said Mara, stepping nearer. But the shard must taste her fire, her life. Only then can you bend it to your will. For a long moment, Aemond said nothing. The wind keened through the black ruins. Then he turned to Vhagar, who lay watching them. One golden eye half-lidded but burning still with the pride of her kind. My oldest friend, he whispered, you have followed me through war and storm, through blood and fire. Will you follow me once more? Vhagar's throat rumbled, a sound that might have been assent or warning. Her head lowered until her vast jaw rested before him. Mara stepped back, her hands trembling slightly. Do it quickly. The shard is restless. Aemond unsheathed Dark Sister. The blade's edge gleamed black-red in the firelight. He pressed its point against his palm, slicing deep. Blood welled dark and hot, and the shard in his other hand pulsed fiercely, drinking in the scent of dragonfire and pain. Then, with a steady breath, Aemond turned the blade and drew it across Vhagar's scales, just enough to pierce the skin, to let a single drop of her ancient blood fall upon the shard. The effect was instant. Light flared between them, searing and blinding. Aemond staggered back as the shard rose from his hand, floating in the air between man and dragon. Its glow deepened from crimson to gold, then to a color that defied name, the color of creation, of fire unbound. Vhagar roared, wings unfurling, and her cry became Aemond's own. Their voices joined as one, and the air around them exploded with light. The shard spun faster and faster until it was no longer a stone, but a sun pouring radiance into the sky. When at last it stilled, it hovered before Aemond's chest. He reached out, and it sank into him, vanishing beneath his breastplate like a spark swallowed by darkness. He gasped, falling to one knee. Flames rippled over his skin and vanished. For a heartbeat, silence. Then he rose. His hair glowed faintly in the dim light. Silver turned to pale fire, and his eye burned gold. Mara's voice trembled. "What have you done?" He turned toward her, and his smile was terrible to behold. "I have become what I was born to be." The ground shook violently. From the east came a roar that split the heavens. The demon had returned, drawn by the blaze of power. But this time, Aemond did not mount Vhagar. He stood at her side, hand upon her flank. "Fly, my queen," he whispered. "Let them see what fire truly means." Vhagar's wings spread wide, casting the ruins in shadow. Together they rose, and as they did, fire licked along Aemond's arms, wreathing him in living flame. The shard's power burned in him now, neither curse nor gift, but something beyond both. From the heart of the storm, the demon came, its wounds sealed, its eyes burning hotter than the sun. The two fires met in the sky above Old Valyria, and the air itself screamed. Vhagar roared her challenge. Aemond raised Dark Sister high, its edge aflame. And thus began the second battle of the doom, dragon against demon, fire against hunger, and a prince who dared to bind the unbindable. The storm above Old Valyria was a wound in the heavens. Fire and ash swirled together in a vast vortex, a crown of ruin for the two beings that clashed beneath it. Vhagar, the mightiest of living dragons, dove from the clouds with her wings stretched wide, her roar shaking the very foundations of the earth. Opposite her rose the demon, its form no longer wholly of flesh or flame, but something in between, a shape of burning stone and molten shadow, alive with the fury of forgotten gods. Aemond clung to Vhagar's back, his cloak burned away, his silver hair turned to threads of fire. His armor glowed faintly red, as if the dragon's blood burned within him now. The shard's power had become one with his heart. He could feel it pulsing with every beat, the heat of it coursing through his veins, filling his sight with gold and crimson. He felt no fear, no pain, only the exaltation of boundless might. Below, the blackened plains of Valyria stretched endless. Rivers of magma glowed like veins through the shattered land, and in their reflection, the battle burned twice as bright. "Dracarys!" Aemond roared, his voice carrying like thunder. Vhagar unleashed her fury. Her flame struck the demon's chest and burst outward in a wave of light that blinded the sky. The creature reeled, its wings folding inward, molten ichor spilling from its wounds. Yet, even as it fell, it screamed, and that sound was like the shattering of the world. Rage, grief, hunger, all bound into one endless roar. Aemond's head rang with the force of it. The shard within him pulsed wildly, answering the cry. He felt the demon's pain echoing through him, and for a terrible instant, he saw its memory. A Valyrian lord, long dead, stood upon a spire of obsidian, chanting in the tongue of fire. Before him knelt the dragon that would become the demon, once proud, once free. They had bound it with sorcery, fed it the hearts of its own kind, and when the doom came, its rage had torn the spell apart. It had lived ever since, neither alive nor dead, feeding upon the ruin of its makers. The vision faded. Aemond gasped, the wind torn from his lungs. "It remembers," he muttered. "It remembers what was done to it, Vhagar roared beneath him, circling the wounded beast. The demon crashed into the plain below, sending waves of molten rock in every direction. For a heartbeat, it lay still, its great body heaving. Then it began to rise again. "By fire and blood," Aemond swore, drawing Dark Sister. "We end this." He guided Vhagar into a dive, flames trailing her like a comet's tail. The wind screamed past them. The demon raised its head, its jaws opening in defiance, and the two fires met mid-air. The explosion lit the ruins for leagues around. When the light faded, both dragon and monster plummeted through a storm of ash. Aemond's ears rang. His sight flickered between the world and visions of flame. He could feel Vhagar's heartbeat falter beneath him. "Stay with me," he whispered through gritted teeth. "Not yet, old girl. Not yet." Vhagar struck the ground hard, claws gouging stone, her wings folding in pain. The demon landed opposite, crippled but still burning, its wings torn, its chest a crater of molten ruin. Each breath it took sent sparks spinning into the smoke. Aemond slid from the saddle, his boots sinking into the black ash. His sword burned faintly in his hand, its edge alive with red light. The shard within him thrummed in answer, pulling him toward the wounded creature. Mara appeared then, stumbling through the smoke, her gray cloak tattered and her eyes wide with terror. "Aemond!" she cried. "You must end it now, before it devours you both." He barely heard her. The demon's eyes met his, and again the whisper came, not from without, but from within. "You know me," it said, though its mouth did not move. "You are me." Aemond staggered back, clutching his chest. "No," he hissed. "I am Targaryen. I am fire made flesh." "Yes," the voice purred. "Fire made flesh. The same fire that built Valyria and destroyed it." The shard's glow spread through Aemond's body, outlining his veins in gold. The heat was unbearable. Vhagar's pained rumble echoed behind him, a sound that broke through the haze of power. He turned toward her and froze. Her eyes had changed. The golden iris now burned crimson, the same hue as the shard's light. Her wings twitched restlessly, smoke rising from her nostrils. "She feels it," Mara said, her voice shaking. "You've bound her to it as well. If you do not sever the link, I will master it." Aemond interrupted, his voice harsh. "I will master it, or I will burn with it." He strode forward toward the demon, the heat curling the air around him. The creature's gaze followed, wary, almost curious. Dark Sister pulsed in his grip, its Valyrian steel singing softly, a sound like the hiss of breath before flame. Aemond raised the blade. "You are fire without master," he said, "and I am fire that remembers its name." He plunged the sword into the demon's chest. The explosion that followed was beyond light, beyond sound. The world vanished in a blaze that burned the sky white. Aemond screamed, not in pain, but in rapture, as the shard within him and the heart of the demon became one. The power flooded him, burning away thought, flesh, memory, everything but flame. When the light faded, silence. Smoke drifted over the plain. The demon was gone. Only a great crater of glowing stone remained. Vhagar crouched upon its edge, trembling, her scales streaked with gold fire that faded as she breathed. Mara crawled through the ash, coughing. "Aemond?" she whispered. He stood at the crater's heart, alive, but changed. His hair was white as frost, his armor molten red, and his eye blazed like the sun. When he spoke, his voice echoed with another's tone, deeper, older. "It is done," he said. "The demon sleeps. In me." Mara stared at him in horror. "You have not destroyed it. You have become it." Aemond turned toward Vhagar. The The great dragon lowered her head, but her gaze was uncertain. "No," he said softly. "I have given it purpose. The hunger obeys me now." He looked east toward the smoking sea. "The doom took Valyria's pride. I will take its power. Westeros will burn or kneel before the fire reborn." Mara backed away, shaking her head. "You would bring the doom upon the world again." He smiled faintly. "No, lady, I would bring its dawn." Vhagar spread her wings, vast and terrible, and the wind from them swept the ash aside. Aemond climbed upon her back, flames rippling across his armor like a living mantle. As they rose into the blood-red sky, Mara's voice followed him, faint and desperate. "You cannot master hunger, Aemond. It always devours in the end." He did not answer. Vhagar's roar split the heavens, and with it rose the fire of Valyria once more, born not in ruins, but in a man who had become the flame itself. The wind carried the taste of ash and salt as Vhagar's vast shadow swept over the smoking sea. The storm that had raged above Valyria was gone, leaving behind a strange calm, a silence that felt wrong, heavy, as though the world itself held its breath. Aemond Targaryen rode at her neck, his silver hair whipped by the wind, his armor gleaming faintly with the dull glow of embers. His one eye blazed like molten gold, casting a faint light over the dragon's ancient scales. The shard's power still pulsed within him. He could feel it with every beat of his heart, a steady rhythm, like the breathing of something vast and sleeping beneath his skin. He had bound the demon, but not destroyed it. Its hunger was his now, coiled deep within, whispering in the spaces between thought and dream. The sea below steamed, its waves dark and sluggish with silt and fire. From the depths rose pillars of smoke and light, glowing faintly like the breath of dragons long dead. Aemond gazed down and saw ruins, half swallowed by the waves, broken towers, shattered bridges, remnants of a civilization that had once ruled the world. He wondered if this was how Valyria had looked in the last moments before the doom. Bright, proud, and utterly blind to its fall. Behind him, Vhagar growled low, uneasy. Even this ancient beast, born of the first dragons, felt the weight of that place. Aemond placed a hand on her neck, his voice low. "Peace, old girl. The ghosts will not harm us." Yet even as he spoke, the air thickened. A mist rose from the sea, gray at first, then crimson, swirling in strange patterns. The wind died. The smell of fire and salt grew stronger, and within the mist, faint shapes began to move. Aemond stiffened. At first he thought them shadows of smoke, but as they drifted closer, he saw faces. Dragons and men alike, half seen, their eyes glowing faintly. They circled him in silence, a host of shades wrapped in firelight. Vhagar roared, and the mist shuddered as if in pain. But the specters did not flee. They hovered, watching. Then one stepped forward, a tall figure robed in crimson, his features pale and sharp, his eyes twin coals of molten gold. His voice came like wind through embers. "Blood of the dragon," the shade intoned. "You tread upon the grave of your fathers. Why have you come?" Aemond tightened his grip on Dark Sister. "To claim what was lost," he said. "To take back the fire that built our house." The spirit regarded him in silence. "The fire you seek burned the world once before. Would you set it aflame again?" Aemond's smile was cold. "The world has forgotten fear. Perhaps it must be reminded." Murmurs rippled through the mist, a sound like crackling flame. The spirit's eyes narrowed. "You have touched the heart that was sealed. You bear its hunger within you." "I have tamed it," Aemond replied. The spirit's expression darkened. None may tame the fire. It devours all. The mist thickened, curling around Vhagar's wings. The dragon hissed, shaking her head. Aemond felt the shard stir within him, heat rising through his chest. The shades pressed closer, their faces flickering with anger and sorrow. "Begone," Aemond commanded. "Your time is ended." But the spirit raised a hand, and the air rippled with ancient power. "You are bound to the curse," it said. "Until you unmake the fire, you will never leave these waters." Aemond laughed, a harsh, cold sound that echoed through the mist. "No wall, no sea, no curse shall hold me. I am Aemond Targaryen, rider of Vhagar, and I will burn my own path through death itself if I must." The spirit's gaze fell to the sword in his hand. "Then let it be tested." The sea erupted. From the depths rose three shapes, colossal, gleaming, alive. Dragons of smoke and molten stone, their wings wide as mountains. Their roars shook the air, their eyes burning with the same unholy fire as the shard within him. Vhagar reared back, roaring defiance. Her flame burst forth, searing the nearest phantom dragon. It screamed as its body turned to ash, but from that ash rose another, larger still. The sky became a storm of wings and fire. Aemond clung to the saddle, the shard's power surging through him until it felt as though he might burst. Every strike Vhagar made was his strike. Every flame she breathed was his own. Together they fought through the phantoms, their fire tearing holes in the mist. Still, the spirits came. Still they whispered in 100 voices, "Unmake it, unmake it, or be consumed." Aemond's heart pounded. He felt the shard burning in his chest like a star, its hunger clawing to be free. The vision of the demon flashed before his eyes, the fire, the ruin, the endless hunger, and for a heartbeat he felt the truth of their warning. Then he crushed it. "I will not be unmade," he growled. "I will rule this fire, or the world will burn with me." He raised Dark Sister high. The blade shone like living flame, its runes blazing brighter than ever before. He drove it into the air, and from its edge burst a column of fire that tore the sky apart. The spirits screamed. The mist split like a curtain, the sea churning violently beneath. The phantom dragons dissolved into sparks, fading into the wind. The crimson-robed spirit lingered a moment longer, watching him with eyes full of sorrow. "So be it," it whispered. "Then may the fire you wield be your only friend, and your only grave." And it was gone. Silence returned. The sea was still once more. Only the hiss of cooling rock and the slow beat of Vhagar's wings remained. Aemond sat in the saddle, breath ragged, sweat mingling with soot upon his face. The power within him had quieted, but it did not fade. It was his now, his curse, his weapon. He looked to the west, where the faintest glimmer of dawn touched the horizon. Westeros lay beyond that light, his birthright, his battleground. "Come, old girl," he murmured to Vhagar. "Let us see if they still remember what it means to fear the dragon." Vhagar's roar split the morning sky, echoing for leagues across the Dead Sea. Flames licked her scales as she rose higher, bearing her rider toward the dawn. And far below, beneath the smoking waters, something stirred once more, a ripple in the deep, faint but growing. The fire Aemond had bound had not been slain. It waited, whispering in the dark. Its hunger was not ended. It had only changed its master. The wind off the narrow sea was cold and cruel as Aemond Targaryen crossed into the skies of Westeros once more. Months had passed since his flight from Valeria's blackened tomb, and still the mark of that cursed land burned within him. The shard's power had not waned, it had merely settled, coiled deep in his heart like a sleeping dragon, waiting for his command. Below, the world spread out in rolling green and gray. The Stormlands, fierce and proud, their castles crouched upon cliffs like watching hawks. Vhagar's vast wings stirred the air into tempests as she passed, and shepherds fled from their flocks in terror, crying out that a demon had come down from the heavens. Aemond heard their voices faintly through the wind, but he felt nothing. He was beyond such things now: fear, pity, doubt. All that remained was purpose. He rode northward, toward Harrenhal, that vast and broken fortress whose black towers still bore the scars of dragonfire from ages past. It was there that his enemies had gathered, the remnants of Rhaenyra's council, the men who had whispered her downfall even as they claimed her cause. And it was there, Aemond thought, that his destiny would be forged anew. Night fell before he reached it. The moon hung pale and sharp over the riverlands, its reflection trembling in the waters of the God's Eye. Harrenhal rose from the lakeshore, a corpse of a castle, its walls melted and twisted, its towers hollow and scorched. No light shone from its windows. Vhagar descended with a hiss of flame, her talons tearing furrows in the ashen earth. Aemond dismounted and drew his cloak tight against the wind. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of rot and old stone. He entered the ruined gatehouse alone. Inside, the halls echoed with whispers, wind sighed through broken windows, water dripped from ceilings split by fire. Yet beneath these sounds came others, softer, slower, footsteps, breathing. Aemond's hand found the hilt of Dark Sister. "Show yourselves," he said, his voice calm, "or I'll let the dragon do the asking." From the shadows stepped men in dark mail. The leader was tall and broad, his hair streaked with gray, his face hidden beneath a steel mask shaped like a falcon's beak. "My prince," the man said, bowing his head. "We did not think you would return." Aemond's eye narrowed. "And yet here I stand." The masked man raised his head. "You were thought dead. The sea swallowed you," they said. "Even the queen mourned." "The queen mourns too easily," Aemond said, "and her grief too often turns to betrayal." The man's silence told him what he already knew. Rhaenyra had lost her grip upon her throne. The dance had left her bleeding and desperate. There were those who whispered that she had made peace with the Greens, others who said she plotted still. Aemond cared little for either tale. He had seen true power, and it did not sit upon any throne. "Gather the men," he ordered, every sword still loyal to the dragon's blood. "The time for whispers is done." The masked knight hesitated. "And whom do we serve, my prince? The queen, or you?" Aemond's lips curved into a faint, cold smile. "You serve fire. The queen serves her grief. Choose which burns brighter." He turned away, the matter settled. That night, as the campfires flickered along the shores of the God's Eye, Aemond stood alone upon the battlements of Harrenhal, staring across the dark waters. He could feel it stirring again. The shard's pulse, faint but insistent, as though the heart of Valyria itself beat beneath his ribs. He thought of the demon, of the spirits in the smoking sea, of the voice that had whispered, "You are me," and he wondered if perhaps it had spoken truth. Behind him came the soft rustle of silk. Mara of Lys emerged from the shadows, her gray cloak trailing across the stone. Aemond did not turn. "I thought you dead," he said. "You should have wished it so," she replied. Her voice was weary, but steady. "I warned you, Aemond. You cannot bind what was never meant to be chained." He laughed quietly. "And yet I have. The fire obeys me now. Mara stepped closer, her eyes reflecting the light of the fires below. For how long? The hunger never sleeps. It waits. Even now it feeds. On you, on your dragon. I saw what you left behind in Valyria. The sea still burns. Aemond turned then, his gaze sharp as glass. You think to frighten me with ghosts? I have walked through hell and come out crowned in flame. The fire does not command me, Lysani. I am the fire. Mara's expression did not change. Then you are already lost. He stepped toward her, his presence towering, terrible. You think me cursed, woman? No, I am chosen. The fire has no master, but I am no mere man to be consumed by it. I am dragon. At that word, the ground shuddered faintly beneath their feet. From the distant lake came a deep, resonant boom, as if something vast had stirred beneath its surface. Aemond's head snapped toward the sound. The god's eye, Mara whispered. It hears you. The lake glowed faintly, a pale red shimmer spreading across its surface. Steam rose where no heat should have been. Aemond felt it in his bones, a call, deep and ancient, older even than the shard within him. Without another word, he descended the crumbling stair and strode toward the water's edge. Mara followed at a distance, calling his name, but he did not hear her. The night was still. The lake mirrored the stars, yet beneath its calm, Aemond sensed movement. Something vast, slow, coiling in the deep. He knelt, his reflection rippling before him. The water smelled faintly of brimstone. Then he saw it, a glimmer far below, faint but growing. Gold, red, white, like the light of a dying star. Vega roared from the heights above the castle, wings spreading wide, her voice full of warning. Aemond smiled faintly. Do you feel it, old girl? The fire calls us home. The lake erupted. A column of water and flame shot skyward, hurling Aemond backward. From its heart rose a shape too vast for mortal eyes, a dragon's head wrought of molten light, eyes burning like suns. Its voice was a roar and a whisper both, echoing through the air and the soul alike. You took what was mine, it said. Now I will take what is yours. The force of it drove him to his knees. The shard within him blazed, answering the call. His veins seared with fire. He felt Vagar's distant cry, her pain, her rage. Mara's voice came faintly through the storm. Aemond, you must sever it, cast it into the lake. He rose, trembling, flames wreathing his hands. No, he said, his voice a mixture of man and something far greater. It is bound to me, and so shall you be. The spirit dragon's roar split the heavens. Fire and water became one, boiling the very air, and as Aemond raised his sword once more, the lake burned red beneath the stars. At Harrenhal, men awoke screaming, for they saw dragons of flame circling the tower tops and heard a voice like thunder proclaim a name not of this world. Aemond the Burning, heir to the hunger of the demon. And in that hour, the age of peace ended. The morning after the burning of the god's eye dawned red as blood. Smoke hung low upon the lake, coiling like serpents in the mist, and the air was heavy with the stench of brimstone and charred earth. Men whispered that a second doom had come to Westeros. Fishermen fled the shores, swearing that they had seen fire moving beneath the water, vast, slow, alive. In the halls of Harrenhal, fear had taken hold. The soldiers who had sworn to Aemond now crossed themselves when they heard his name. Some tried to flee in the night, but the ones who reached the gates found them sealed by fire that would not die. Aemond himself had not been seen since the eruption. The last glimpse of him had been upon the lakeshore, wreathed in flame and shadow, standing before the column of burning water. Those who looked too long swore they saw a dragon-shaped light rise into the storm and vanish toward the clouds. Only Mara knew the truth. She found him 3 days later in the ruin of the Godswood, kneeling beside the blackened heart tree. His armor was cracked and melted, his hair singed to white, his face drawn and hollow, yet his eye still burned with that terrible golden light. "You should not have come," he said softly when he heard her approach. "You left me no choice," she answered. "The lake still burns, Aemond. It will not cool. You've woken something that was meant to sleep forever." He did not rise. "Then let it wake. The world has slept too long beneath weak kings and broken thrones." She came closer, her cloak brushing the dead leaves. "What did you see in the water?" He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Myself, or what I am to become." Mara's hand tightened around the talisman at her throat. "You saw the demon again?" Aemond looked up at her. "No, I saw what it was before the doom, before men twisted its fire into sorcery. It was not evil, it was hunger, pure, unshaped, endless. It is what drives the dragons to soar, the kings to conquer, the seas to swallow the shore. It is life itself." She shook her head, her voice trembling. "You speak madness." "Do I?" he asked. "Tell me, woman, did Valyria fall because its fire turned cruel, or because its masters forgot how to wield it?" She had no answer. Aemond rose then, his shadow long against the ashen tree. The shard's glow bled faintly through the rents in his armor, each heartbeat a flash of crimson light. "The fire has chosen me," he said, "and I will give it purpose again." "By burning the world?" Mara asked. "By remaking it," he said simply. That night, Harrenhal blazed once more. Aemond called his banners beneath the moon, and men gathered though they feared the sight of him. He stood upon the battlements, his voice carrying over the dark waters. "The age of kings is ending," he declared. "The Iron Throne is a shadow's prize. The fire that forged it sleeps within us still, but it has grown cold. I will wake it. I will cleanse this world of its weakness, its cowardice, its false peace. Those who kneel shall rise again in flame. Those who resist shall be ash." None dared answer him. When he turned to Vhagar, the dragon lowered her vast head in silence. Her scales shimmered with a faint red light now, as if the fire that lived in him had spread to her. Her eyes, once a deep, molten gold, had become mirrors of his own. Mara watched from the courtyard as Aemond mounted his dragon. Her lips moved in silent prayer, though she no longer knew which god might hear her. "Fly with me," he said to her suddenly, his voice echoing across the stones. She hesitated. "To where?" "To King's Landing." A murmur ran through the men below. Even the boldest among them blanched at those words. "You would burn the city?" Mara asked, horror creeping into her tone. "I would purify it," he said. "Rhaenyra has lost her throne, and the realm festers with war. But from the ashes, a new dragon shall rise." He smiled faintly, and in that smile there was no mercy. A world without hunger is a world without life. The fire will feed. Mara shook her head. "If you do this, there will be no throne left to rule, only cinders." Aemond regarded her for a long time. "Then let the world see its reckoning. Let it remember the price of forgetting the blood of the dragon." He gave the word, and Vhagar's wings opened like the gates of the abyss. The night exploded in thunder as she leapt skyward, fire trailing from her jaws. The earth trembled beneath her ascent, and men fell to their knees, crying out prayers that went unanswered. Mara turned away as the great beast vanished into the clouds, leaving only flame in her wake. "Seven save us all," she whispered. Vhagar's shadow crossed the rivers and fields as they flew south. Below, towns woke to terror as roofs caught fire from the heat of her passing. Aemond rode in silence, his gaze fixed upon the horizon where the faint glow of King's Landing shimmered like a dying ember. He could see it already, the sprawl of streets and towers, the red keep upon its hill, the faint glint of the Iron Throne. And above it all, the stars, cold and watching. The shard in his breast began to burn again. Its whisper was soft, seductive. Fire unbound, fire reborn. Aemond closed his eye. The voice filled his skull, but now it was not a stranger's. It was his own. When Vhagar's shadow fell upon Blackwater Bay, the bells of the city began to ring. Fleets scattered like ants upon the dark water, and the walls trembled with the screams of the dying. Aemond hovered above the city, the wind tearing at his cloak. For a heartbeat, he hesitated. In that brief silence, he thought he heard another sound, children crying, women praying, the whisper of 1,000 lives clinging to hope. Then the shard pulsed, and the hesitation died. "Dracarys," he said. Fire poured from the heavens. The first blast struck the harbor, turning ships to cinders. The second swept the streets, devouring wood and stone alike. The Red Keep burned from within, its towers bursting into flame as though the earth itself had opened. Aemond watched as the fire spread, his heart steady, his face calm. Below him, the city became a sea of light, 1,000 screaming voices drowned in the roar of the dragon. Yet even as he burned it, the shard within him flared brighter, feeding on the destruction. He felt it spreading again, through his blood, his bones, into Vhagar herself. She roared in agony, her flight faltering. Aemond clutched at his chest, his vision swimming. The fire was no longer his to command. "No," he gasped, "obey me." But the shard did not obey. It laughed, a sound like crackling embers. "You are fire unbound," it whispered, "and fire obeys nothing." Below, King's Landing burned. Above, dragon and rider spiraled through smoke and ash, locked in their own inferno. Mara, watching from the hills beyond the city, saw the sky split open, and for the first time, even she could not tell which flame belonged to Aemond and which to the demon that had claimed him. The skies above King's Landing had become a sea of fire. Smoke poured upward in black rivers, and the night glowed red as if the stars themselves had been set aflame. From the city rose the cries of the doomed, thin, pitiful, swallowed by the endless thunder of collapsing towers. The air was choked with ash and the stench of burning flesh. Vhagar's vast form wheeled through the inferno, her scales gleaming molten gold where the flames licked her. Each beat of her wings sent embers raining down upon the ruins below. Aemond clung to her neck, his armor fused with soot and blood, his hair scorched white as snow. The shard's power burned within him like a living heart, every pulse brighter, every breath heavier with fire. He saw the city beneath him through a haze of heat. The domes of Baelor's Sept were gone, shattered like glass. The Red Keep stood half in ruin, its towers broken, its banners turned to cinders. The Iron Throne itself, he knew, would be melting in the heat, the swords of 1,000 conquered foes running together like wax. He had dreamed of this once, of conquest, of cleansing, of fire that would scour the realm clean of weakness. But now, as he watched the flames devour all, there was no triumph in him, only silence and the faint echo of laughter that was not his own. Vhagar gave a great shuddering roar. Her flight faltered, her wings beating slower. She turned her head, and for the first time Aemond saw fear in her ancient eyes. "Fly," he urged, pressing a hand to her neck. "Up, girl, to the clouds." She obeyed, rising through the smoke, higher and higher, until the city became a distant blaze below. But the air was thick with heat, and each breath burned his lungs. The shard within him was no longer content to rest. It blazed in his chest, a wound that would not heal, a living thing that hungered. He could hear it whisper again, a chorus of voices speaking as one. "You are fire. You are ruin. You are what was, and what shall come again." Aemond gritted his teeth. "I am no slave." "You are flame," the voice answered, "and flame has no master." Pain tore through him. He fell forward, gripping Vhagar's scales as if to steady himself, but his strength was failing. The shard's light bled through his armor, searing lines across the metal. Beneath him, Vhagar roared in agony, her own fire spilling uncontrolled from her jaws. The bond between them, once fierce and true, now twisted into torment. His will, her will, the shard's hunger, all clashing in a storm of power. He tried to steady his mind, to reach for her as he once had in battle. "Fly," he thought. "Please, girl, fly from this." But the link only deepened the pain. He saw through her eyes, the burning world below, the bleeding sky above, and through his, she saw herself, dying flame upon dying wind. And then something within her broke. With a cry that shook the clouds, Vhagar turned. Her flight faltered, her wings drew close to her sides. The fire she had swallowed too long erupted from her throat, a torrent of white-hot flame that seared even the air. "Vhagar, no!" Aemond shouted, his voice lost to the storm. The dragon twisted, wings folding, diving back toward the burning city. Below, the river boiled. The towers of the Red Keep shone like torches in the dark. And through the chaos, Aemond could see a figure on the hill, a woman cloaked in gray, standing unmoved while the world burned. Mara. He felt her eyes upon him even from afar. Then came the whisper, softer than breath, but clear as a bell within his mind. "Cast it away." He looked down at his hands, trembling, glowing from within. The shard's fire coursed through him, wrapping his body in light. He could feel his heart struggling against it, his blood turning to flame. If he let it go, the fire would die with him. The hunger would end. If he held it, the fire would never end. The choice was a blade between his ribs. The city loomed closer. The wind tore at him, the roar of flame filling his ears. Vhagar's eyes burned with pain and rage. She fought to keep her wings open, but her strength was gone. Aemond drew Darksister one last time. The blade's edge glowed red, drinking the light of the flames around it. He looked at the sword, at the weapon that had spilled the blood of his kin, that had carved his name into legend, and he thought of what he had become, a king of ashes, a god of ruin. He pressed the tip of the blade to his breast. The shard's glow flared as if in fury. His hand shook, not from weakness, but from the fire that raged to live. "Fire is not forever," he whispered. "Even the sun must die." And he drove the sword home. The world erupted. Vhagar screamed, a sound beyond mortal hearing, as fire consumed them both. The light spread outward in a wave that blotted out the sky, brighter than any dragon fire that had ever burned. The city below vanished in that light. The sea turned to steam. And then, as suddenly as it came, the fire was gone. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left of Vhagar but blackened bone and ash. No sign of the prince remained, only a crater where the Red Keep had stood, its stone fused into glass. Mara knelt upon the hill overlooking the ruin. Her cloak was torn, her hair white with ash. She felt the heat still rising from the city, but her gaze was fixed upon the heart of the blaze. where the fire had finally gone still. "It is done," she whispered. "The hunger sleeps." The wind carried her words away. That night, no stars shone over King's Landing. The moon hid her face, and the sea lay still as iron. But in the ruins of the Red Keep, buried beneath the molten stone, something faintly glowed. A single shard, still pulsing, slow and steady, like a heart waiting to wake. And far away, beyond the narrow sea, the smoking land stirred. The ashes shifted. A whisper passed through the darkness, older than language, softer than breath. Fire unbound, fire reborn. The hunger was not gone. It was only sleeping, dreaming of the prince who had dared to cage it, and of the world that would one day burn again. The years that followed were spoken of in whispers, and only in the dark. King's Landing never recovered from the burning. Where the Red Keep once stood, there was only a hill of glassed stone, and beneath it, a hollow that no man dared approach. The people called it the Heart of Fire. At night, it glowed faintly, red as an ember, though no flame burned there. And when the wind blew from the east, the air would shimmer and hum with a sound like distant wings. The few who lingered in the ruined city swore they heard voices rising from the depths. They said a dragon's shadow moved beneath the earth, that the stones themselves breathed. Yet the Meisters, sent from Old Town to study the place, found no proof of life. The heat that lingered in the glass would melt their instruments, and the air itself stank of death and old magic. So they sealed the place. The new king, Aegon, son of Rhaenyra's last surviving child, rebuilt the city upon the outskirts of the ruin. He forbade all to enter the heart, decreeing it cursed by gods and men alike. But Aegon's blood was thin, and the small folk murmured that his dragons were stunted things, weak and witless. The fire had gone out of House Targaryen. Far to the east, across the narrow sea, storms gathered above the smoking lands once more. For the first time in an age, ships passing through the stepstones saw fire on the horizon. The sea boiled where it touched the shadow of Valyria, and among the free cities, tales began to spread, of a ship of blackened steel that drifted the coast, its sails torn, its decks empty, save for a single rider clad in silvered armor. His helm was shaped like a dragon's head, and when he turned it toward the wind, the air grew hot enough to burn. The sailors called him the Ashen Prince. None who saw him up close ever lived to tell the tale. It was in Lys, one mist-heavy night, that the first new whisper reached the west. A merchant returning from the ruins of Valyria stumbled into the harbor, half mad, his body burned and blistered, his eyes bright with terror. "They are waking," he cried. "The dragons that were dead, they are waking again." He spoke of fire beneath the sea, of shapes moving in the smoke, of a mountain that had split itself open and bled light upon the water, and of a figure standing upon that molten shore, one-eyed and terrible, his shadow stretching from the sea to the sky. No one believed him. But 3 nights later, the fires of Myr were seen from Pentos, and every ship in the bay caught flame without spark or tinder. Mara of Lys, now old and gray, lived in seclusion near the cliffs of Driftmark. She seldom spoke, save to the sea, and even then in whispers. Those who came to her seeking knowledge found her frail but sharp-eyed, her hands trembling, but her mind still keen as a knife. She kept a single relic upon her table, a black shard of glassy stone, faintly warm to the touch. It pulsed sometimes, slow and steady, like a living heart. The queen's envoys came once, bearing gold and promises. They wished to study it, they said, for the glory of the realm. Mara refused them all. "You study it, and it will study you," she told them. "And what it learns, it keeps." When they left, She stood upon her balcony and looked east across the narrow sea. The night was clear, the water calm, but a faint red light burned on the horizon, and the wind carried with it a whisper she had not heard in many years. Fire unbound, fire reborn. Her knees nearly gave way. No, she breathed. It cannot be. But in her heart, she knew it was true. The hunger never died. It merely learned to wait. In those days, dreams began to trouble the realm. Lords woke screaming in their beds, speaking of dragons of molten glass and skies full of ash. Women swore they felt heat rising from the ground, even in the snowbound north. Ravens sent to the citadel burst into flame before they reached their perches. A sickness followed. The maesters called it the red fever. Those who fell to it burned from within, their veins glowing faintly through their skin. In the last moments before death, they spoke in tongues unknown to men. The citadel gathered in secret and decreed the cause unknown. But in their records, sealed by order of the archmeisters, one note was written in the margins of a dusty tome: "The blood remembers." Years passed, and the stories grew. Children born near the heart of fire were said to have strange eyes, one gold, one red, and when they wept, their tears left faint burns upon their cheeks. Priests came from Volantis, declaring them blessed by the Lord of Light, though the Targaryens called them cursed. And in the east, near the ruins of Valyria, travelers spoke of new creatures taking to the air, dragons smaller than those of old, but more terrible to behold. Their scales shone like obsidian, their fire burned white as the sun, and their cries sounded almost human. They did not nest, nor breed, nor sleep. They hunted, as though searching for something. Some said they were drawn to blood of Valyrian descent, others that they sought their master. Mara did not live to see the end. On the night she died, the moon turned red above Driftmark, and the sea glowed faintly as if reflecting some unseen fire. Her servants found her at dawn, seated by her window, her eyes open, a faint smile upon her lips. The shard was gone. In its place, upon the table, lay a single scale, black as midnight, warm to the touch, and outside, upon the horizon, the red light burned brighter than ever. That year, across the narrow sea, a great storm rose from the smoking lands. Its clouds were lit from within by lightning that burned red instead of white. And from that storm came the sound of wings. The sailors who survived it told of a dragon unlike any before, vast as a mountain, cloaked in fire, with a rider wreathed in gold flame. They said he bore no face, only a single eye that burned like the sun. When he passed overhead, the sea itself caught fire, and the sky turned to glass. The men of Westeros would remember that sight for generations. Songs were written in fear and wonder, calling him by many names: the last dragon, the fire that walks, the prince of ashes. But in the free cities, the old name spread once more like wildfire through the taverns and the temples, whispered by sailors and slaves alike: Aemond Targaryen, the hunger of the demon. And in the night that followed, Valyria burned anew. The winds of the narrow sea carried ash once more. In the skies between Lys and Pentos, smoke unfurled like black banners, and the horizon burned with a feverish light. Those who sailed beneath it swore they saw a shape moving through the clouds, vast, shimmering, and terrible. Some called it a storm. Others, remembering old tales, crossed themselves and whispered of a dragon reborn. In the citadel of Old Town, ravens came by the hundreds. Their wings were scorched, their cries thin and broken. The maesters gathered in the rookery, faces pale beneath their hoods. "Fire from the east," said one. The smoking lands burn again. The Archmaester of Whispers opened a sealed scroll that had come from Volantis and read aloud. His voice trembled, though his words were cold. The doom walks again. It bears a man's face. The council fell into silence. One old maester, bent and gray, rose with a lantern in his shaking hand. "I was but a novice when they found the ruins of the Red Keep," he said. The ground still burned, and in the molten stone, they found marks, scales, and a man's hand. That hand had only one eye carved upon the palm. He set the lantern down upon the map of the world, its light flickering over the great eastern sea. The line of Targaryen has always been bound to the fire. Perhaps one day the fire will come to claim its due. None spoke again. The wind outside carried the faint smell of smoke across the reach. In those days, the Seven Kingdoms were weary. The dragons of Aegon's line had long since perished, their bones displayed in the halls of kings as relics of a vanished glory. No one had seen true flame in the sky for half a century. The small folk no longer bowed their heads when they spoke of House Targaryen. But that year, the stars began to fall. Red comets streaked across the heavens, bright enough to wake the sleeping. In the riverlands, crops turned to ash overnight. In Dorne, the sands themselves grew hot enough to burn a man's feet. And one night, from the high tower of Harrenhal, long abandoned and haunted by its own legends, a lone watchman saw fire rising from the lake once more. He ran to ring the bell, but before his hand reached the rope, the fire took him. Far to the east, where Valyria's ruins still bled smoke into the sky, ships from Qohor and Tyrosh were vanishing. Those who returned told tales of a storm unlike any other, a storm of flame, lightning that burned red, rain that hissed like boiling oil, and through the clouds they saw it, a dragon greater than any in living memory, its wings vast enough to blot out the sun. Its scales shone black as obsidian, its eyes molten gold. Upon its back rode a man clad in armor that glowed faintly with fire, his hair white as ash, his face veiled by a helm wrought in the likeness of a dragon's skull. He did not speak, he did not roar, he merely passed overhead, and where his shadow fell, the sea itself caught flame. The sailors who survived gave him many names: the Ashen King, the Flame that Dreams, the Doom returned. But in Lys, an old woman with eyes like smoke heard their tales and wept. "Not the Doom," she said, "the Doom's heir." From Valyria he came west, following the path of fire and memory. The free cities burned in his wake. Mir's golden towers turned to glass. The sea around Volantis boiled for 7 days, and when he reached Dragonstone, the old fortress of his blood, the island trembled at his landing. The dragon's roar was heard as far as King's Landing, though none there had seen a living worm in generations. Fishermen along the Blackwater swore they saw light upon the clouds, a red dawn where no sun rose. In the great hall of Dragonstone, where cobwebs hung like banners and dust lay thick upon the floor, Aemond Targaryen walked once more. His boots left no prints in the ash. The walls trembled with the echo of old fire. He stood before the carved stone throne and laid his hand upon its arm. The stone hissed beneath his touch, heat spreading like blood through its veins. "It has been long," he murmured. His voice was low, roughened by smoke. But the blood remembers. Outside, lightning flashed red across the sea. Vhagar's shape moved in the clouds, vast and patient, her eyes glowing like twin suns. Mara's name was still known among the followers of the Red God. They had taken her writings, her warnings, and turned them into prophecy. In Volantis, beneath the black walls of the temple, The high priestess read aloud from the old scrolls by the light of burning oil. When the fire sleeps in glass and wakes in blood, the hunger shall rise, and he who tamed it once shall return, crowned in ruin, to feed the world anew. The crowd knelt as one, chanting softly, Azor Ahai, the Lord of Flame reborn. But one priest, younger and less certain, whispered to his master, What if the fire does not save us? What if it comes to consume? The high priest smiled. All salvation is born of burning. On a cold winter night, in the rebuilt King's Landing, the ground trembled. The heart of fire flared brighter than it had in living memory. The glass hill cracked, molten light spilling from within like blood from a wound. The guards fled. The city woke screaming, and from that light rose wings. They were not Vhagar's, too vast, too bright, too terrible. The creature that emerged bore no flesh, no bone, only flame shaped like a dragon. Its eyes were two suns burning within its skull. It rose into the heavens, scattering sparks across the clouds. Behind it came another shape, smaller but human. A man, or what had once been one, wreathed in gold fire. Aemond Targaryen. He looked upon the city that had once defied him, and his single eye blazed brighter than the creature beside him. The hunger is not death, he said. It is life unending, and the world shall remember its maker. The dragon roared, and the city became light. From Dorne to the wall, men saw the sky burn red and thought the sun had fallen. But when the light faded, the city still stood. Its towers glowed faintly, the air warm with the scent of smoke. The people knelt in silence, not knowing whether to pray or to weep. For in the heart of the city, upon the hill of glass, a single man stood where the flame had been. His armor was cracked and blackened, his hair white as snow. He looked to the sky, and the dragon was gone. Only ash fell around him, soft as snow. Aemond closed his eye. The shard's voice was silent at last. For the first time in years, there was peace. He could feel Vhagar somewhere beyond the veil, waiting among the stars. He sank to his knees upon the warm stone. The hunger had been sated. The fire had come full circle, and in the silence that followed, the realm breathed again. But far beneath the city, deep within the earth, something still glowed. A single spark, pulsing faintly, waiting for the next dreamer of dragons to wake it. The snows came earlier that year. Across the ruins of King's Landing, flakes of white fell upon blackened stone, softening the scars of flame. The city stood once more, rebuilt in part, though its heart remained a wound. No tower had risen upon the hill of glass where Aemond Targaryen had vanished, and none dared raise one. There the stone still pulsed faintly in winter's light, as though some ember beneath the earth refused to die. The small folk called it the dragon's grave. They left offerings at its base, bits of bone, candles, scraps of parchment bearing prayers written in shaking hands. Some begged for mercy, others for strength. And sometimes, when the wind was still, the candles burned without flame, and the prayers caught fire in silence. Far above the city, in the high halls of the Red Keep reborn, the king sat uneasy upon his throne. He was Aemond's kin, though the blood of dragons ran thin in him. He dreamed of fire and woke each night with the taste of smoke in his mouth. The masters told him such dreams were no more than fancy, echoes of the tales that haunted his house. But deep down, the king knew better. "Fire sleeps," said his grandmother once, the dowager queen, her hair white as frost. "But it never dies." Her words had proven true. To the east, the sea boiled. a crimson mist rose from the waters near Valeria's coast, and ships that ventured close returned half-melted, their hulls scorched as though by dragon fire. From Qohor to Volantis, seers whispered that the world was turning once again. And in the temples of R'hllor, the priests sang louder. "The flame that dreams stirs beneath the ash," they cried. "The prince who was promised walks again, his eye a sun, his heart a furnace of the gods." They built fires high and offered sacrifices by the hundreds, their smoke rising black against the dawn. Yet the more they burned, the darker the skies became. Among them was a red priestess, younger than most, called Mariah of Lys. She had read the lost scrolls of Mara, the woman who had seen the doom reborn, and she alone doubted the zeal of her brethren. "If he returns," she said quietly to her master, "will it be to save us, or to finish what he began?" The high priest smiled through the haze of smoke. "Does it matter, child? The fire will come either way." It was during the second moon of that year that the first true sign appeared. A shepherd in the Reach found one of his flock burned to cinder, but no fire had touched the grass around it. The carcass smoldered as though flame had come from within. When the Maester opened its chest, he found its heart turned to stone, yet still beating faintly. Soon after, other beasts were found the same, in the Dornish sands, the forests of the Vale, even the frozen wastes beyond the wall. Ravens brought word to the citadel, but the maesters who read the letters grew pale and sealed them without reply. One night, a storm rose over Old Town. Lightning raged across the sky, red as blood. And from the top of the high tower, a watcher swore he saw a figure standing upon the clouds, a man clad in burning mail, his hair like silver flame, his single eye blazing through the tempest. When the storm passed, the tower's bells rang on their own, tolling a dirge none had taught them. In the west, at Fair Isle, a fisherwoman found a shard of glass upon the shore, dark, smooth, faintly warm. She brought it to her hearth, thinking it a pretty stone, but that night her cottage burned to the ground. No smoke rose from the ashes, and no body was found. Only the shard remained, pulsing faintly in the light of dawn. Word of it spread quickly. In taverns and markets, men began to speak the name again, first in jest, then in dread. Aemond Targaryen, the hunger of the demon, and always the whisper followed. He sleeps beneath the fire he made. The king sent riders to the dragon's grave, fearing what the signs foretold. His soldiers found the air thick with heat, though the day was cold and gray. The ground trembled beneath their boots, and when one bent to touch the glass, his hand came away blistered. That night, as they camped upon the hill, they heard a sound, a slow, steady rhythm, deep within the stone. A heartbeat. The captain fled at dawn. The rest stayed and were never seen again. When their ashes were found a fortnight later, the king ordered the hill sealed and forbidden by royal decree. Yet no wall of steel or faith could quiet the fear that spread. The old songs returned, sung by children who did not understand their meaning. Fire sleeps in stone and blood. Fire wakes when time is good. One eye opens, one will see, the world reborn in flame and sea. In those same days, Mariah of Lys dreamed of the smoking lands. She saw the sea burning red, the mountains weeping fire, and a dragon of light rising from the ruins. Upon its back rode a man crowned in flame, his face half shadow, half star. When she woke, her temple was aflame. Her fellow priests lay dead, their bodies burned but their eyes still open, reflecting fire. She fled west, across the sea, guided by her dreams. "The fire calls," she said to those who took her aboard their ships. it seeks its heir. None who sailed with her survived the voyage. That winter, the winds shifted, the heart of fire burned brighter, and the snows around it melted into black water. The people fled inland, leaving their homes behind. One boy stayed, a bastard born of some forgotten line, with silver hair and pale eyes that shimmered faintly in torchlight. He knelt upon the edge of the glass hill and whispered to the earth, as if speaking to something beneath. "Are you cold?" he asked softly. "Do you still sleep?" The ground answered with a low, trembling hum. The boy smiled. "I dreamed of you," he said. "They said you would come again." And deep below, the ember pulsed faster, as though it had heard. On the last night of that year, fire lit the skies above the narrow sea. Ships in the stepstones saw the waves rise in walls of flame. From the ashes of Valyria came a roar that shook the heavens. In the morning, no sun rose. The sky was red from horizon to horizon, and where the light struck the sea, it gleamed like molten glass. Those who looked east swore they saw wings cutting through the dawn, vast as storm clouds, and a single eye burning brighter than all the stars. And somewhere, in the ruins of the Red Keep, the stone began to crack. The heartbeat quickened. The hunger stirred once more. The last winter of that age came with no warning. The snows fell red upon the ruins of the world. From Dorne to the Wall, the skies burned each night as if dawn had forgotten its place. The maesters wrote of strange signs, wolves howling at the sun, rivers that ran hot as blood, and stars that fell like sparks from a forge. But beneath their measured words there was fear, quiet and certain. The fire had woken again. In the depths below King's Landing, under the hill once called the Dragon's Grave, something pulsed and breathed. It had been sleeping for near a century, but now it stirred, hungry and restless. The glass that sealed it cracked like the shell of an egg. When the fissures met, light spilled through, brighter than any torch, red as a beating heart. The small folk fled, abandoning the city they had rebuilt. They carried their children north and west, whispering prayers to gods who no longer answered. Even the king, an old man, silver-haired and stooped by years of dread, abandoned his throne. His dreams had been filled with fire and wings, with a single burning eye that watched him from the dark. When dawn came, his bed was empty, the sheets scorched where he had lain. And then, one night, the bells began to ring. A thunderous sound shook the earth, as if the bones of the world were breaking. The hill of glass split apart, and from its wound rose fire. It twisted upward in a pillar of light, filling the heavens. The ground melted beneath it. The river boiled. The moon dimmed. The fire took shape. Wings, vast as storm clouds, a body of molten stone and light, and within it, a man, or the memory of one. Aemond Targaryen had returned. He was no longer flesh, but flame, a figure of burning gold and shadow. His hair streamed like smoke. His armor shone with the heat of a sun. His single eye burned brighter than any forge. When he spoke, the sound rolled across the land like thunder. "Fire sleeps in blood," he said, his voice echoing through the ruin. "And I am its dream." The people of the city fell to their knees. Some prayed, others screamed. None could look upon him for long. Above him, the sky tore open. From the east came a wind of heat and ash, and with it, wings. Hundreds, thousands, the dragons that had vanished from the world. They came like a storm, their cries shaking the heavens. Some were shadow and smoke, others gleamed like molten gold. They circled their reborn king, their fire joining his, until the night burned brighter than day. But not all who saw the blaze bowed. In the north, beneath the broken wall, Old powers stirred, the cold ones who had slept longer still. From the frozen halls of the dead came whispers of frost, the only thing that might withstand the fire. The song of ice and fire began anew. Across the narrow sea, in the shattered temples of R'hllor, the red priests fell to their faces. "He has come!" they cried. "The Lightbringer, the Lord of Flame!" But Mariah of Lys, who had survived the fires of her order and grown ancient in her doubt, shook her head. "Not Lightbringer," she said. "Lightbreaker." Her apprentices trembled before her. "What must we do, mistress?" "Pray for mercy," she answered, "though I do not think he knows the word." And when the wind from the west reached them, hot and bitter as a forge, she wept, for she knew her prayers would never reach any god that still listened. In the riverlands, the trees burned. The heat reached the Dothraki Sea, turning the grass to ash. The great pyramid of Meereen cracked from its base to its crown, and the harpies toppled. From every corner of the known world, people looked west and saw the same red glow. In Old Town, the maesters sealed the citadel. The bells of the high tower rang once and fell silent forever. In Winterfell, the last of the direwolves howled, then vanished into the snows, and upon the wall, rebuilt but long abandoned, one watcher stood. He was a bastard by birth, a man of the snowfields, his hair pale and his eyes of molten gold. He had dreamed of dragons since boyhood. When the light reached him, he did not run. He raised his face to the warmth and smiled. "It is time," he said. The wind carried his voice south, where it mingled with the roar of fire. In King's Landing, where the flames danced upon every street, Aemond walked through his city. His steps turned stone to glass. His breath scorched the air. Yet in his eye, there was no madness, only purpose. The shard that had lived within him for all those years pulsed now in his heart, its rhythm steady and unyielding. He passed through the Red Keep, where no wall or tower now stood. Upon the hill where the Iron Throne had once glittered, he stopped. There, among the ruins, waited a single dragon. Smaller than Vhagar had been, its scales were black as night, its eyes pale as smoke. It bowed its head as he approached. "My heir," he murmured. The creature's flame flickered weakly, uncertain. It was young, new to the world. But as he reached out a hand of fire, it pressed its head against him, and their bond ignited. The sky split with light. Aemond rose once more into the air, his dragon beneath him, his fire stretching from the narrow sea to the mountains of the moon. He looked upon the world and saw it trembling before him, and for the first time, he felt something like peace. He had burned his city, his blood, his name, but in their ashes, he saw eternity. Yet even as the fire consumed all, the wind from the north grew colder. Snow fell again, hissing where it met the flame. And from beyond the shattered wall, shadows moved, pale, silent, endless. They came without sound, without heat, carrying their own deathly light. The cold rose like a tide, and as it met the fire, the air itself screamed. Aemond's gaze turned northward. He saw it then, a darkness deeper than night, a silence vast enough to swallow flame. He had become fire unending, but even fire could feel fear. He raised his hand, and the dragons cried out, their flames brightening the horizon. The sea boiled, the rivers turned to steam, but the snow did not melt, the cold did not flee. Instead, it advanced, steady and patient. At its edge walked figures of ice, men and not men, crowned in frost, their eyes blue as sorrow. And leading them was a shape older than the world, a king without name or mercy. The two forces met upon the ruins of the world: fire and ice, hunger and silence, the end and the beginning. For 7 days and 7 nights, the skies burned red and white. Mountains melted, oceans froze, the world cracked. When at last the storm ceased, there was no sound, no flame, no frost, only mist. And within that mist stood a single figure, neither fire nor ice, but something between. His armor shimmered, half gold, half silver. His eye glowed faintly with the last light of a dying sun. He looked upon the desolation around him and whispered, "It is done." Then he turned his gaze upward, where the first stars began to pierce the smoke. In their reflection, for an instant, 2 dragons appeared, one of flame, one of frost, circling, merging, vanishing into the dark. Thus ended the tale of Aemond Targaryen, the hunger of the demon. But the world endured, and deep within its heart, where fire and ice had met, a faint heartbeat stirred again.